Everything people expect about major turning points in history is wrong. They imagine noise, chaos, sirens, headlines, something obvious, something impossible to ignore. But real change doesn't work like that. It doesn't kick the door open. It walks in quietly, sits in the corner, and waits. And most people never even notice it arrived. There was a time when people believed they were living in the most stable period humanity had ever achieved. Technology was advancing, life was becoming more convenient, and everything felt under control. Not perfect, but predictable. And that illusion is what made the shift invisible. Because underneath that confidence, something subtle was already moving. Not enough to panic anyone, not enough to make the news, just enough to create a feeling. A tension in conversations, a hesitation in decisions, a sense that something wasn't sitting right, even if nobody could explain why. Most people ignored it. Humans are very good at that, especially when acknowledging it would require them to change something. The early signs were small, governments tightening just a little more than usual, economies showing cracks that were easy to dismiss, influences growing that should have raised more questions, nothing dramatic. But enough to make the people who pay attention uneasy. And unease, when it spreads quietly across millions of people, becomes something much bigger than fear. It becomes awareness. That was the beginning, not a collapse, not a crisis. Just the first moment when the world stopped being as stable as people believed it was. And here's what most people missed. The shift didn't begin with events, it began with behavior. People started speaking differently. They stopped making long-term plans with confidence. They started saying things like, "we'll see," instead of "next year." They didn't call it fear, they called it being practical, but something had already changed, and some groups noticed it faster than others, not because of anything mystical, because they had seen it before. Patterns repeat, and those who have lived through enough cycles recognize the tone before anyone else does. There was no panic, no dramatic reaction, just quiet attention, careful observation, and small decisions made early. That's how history actually moves. Not through massive, visible shifts, but through thousands of small choices made by people who feel something changing before they can explain it. From the outside, nothing looked different. Life continued. People went to work, planned trips, watched the news, argued about the same things. But beneath that surface, the ground had already started moving. And once that happens, everything that follows is just a matter of time. This was not the moment things fell apart. This was the moment things began to move. And the people who recognized it didn't wait for proof. They prepared quietly.